Veiled crystals?
What?
Where is my
Veiled crystals! Ladies, gentlemen, and Hieronymo all ages, there's something strange going on in Diablo 4. Since the start of Season 1, I've noticed something going on. I've asked some friends about it, and they said, yeah, that actually does feel off, and I think that might be happening. I checked out Reddit, and it seems I'm not the only one who thinks this by any means. With Season 1 and patch 1.1 that hit right before it, Blizzard has made it harder to make builds. They've secretly increased certain costs, they've reduced the rate that we get certain materials, and part of it is all tied to the season blessings, and it's all just really weird. The ability to make and switch builds has long been a hot button topic for Diablo 4, at least in the community's eyes. After all, one of the taglines they've put out about the game is that they want there to be a variety of powerful and fun builds for every class, right? And the weirdest thing about that concept is just how difficult they've made it to experience multiple builds. Between stash space making it near impossible to really keep a build around if you swap to a new one, enchanting costing an arm and a leg to actually get a decent stat to show up on a piece of gear, upgrading gear costing tons of materials, skill point resetting costing a ton of gold at higher levels, and most importantly the absolute slog that is resetting Paragon points. Not only the cost of doing so, but even more importantly than that, the fact that you have to actively, manually refund every single node one at a time, especially considering at max level you get 225 goddamn points that you have to do this with. They make you actively right-click 225 nodes. There's no reset all, there's no way to make the system be smart and just refund up to the point that you click. You have to go one at a time. In the recent 2 Campfire Chat streams, they have promised us in both of them a bit of a fix for this. Specifically in 1.1.1, coming in about a week and a half, they will be reducing the gold price of refunding skill points and also Paragon points by 40%, which is a decent amount, don't get me wrong, but it's just a drop in the water of the real issues with switching builds. The biggest thing that we all want, that we have been basically begging for, is loadouts, equipment loadouts, because then at least once you have created a proper build, if you want to try something else, it isn't a massive hassle to swap back, right? That would be incredibly convenient. That would be something that you might even expect, and it's hilarious that we have loadouts for our freaking cosmetics in the wardrobe, but not for actual equipable items. All that said, that's not the real focus of why we're here. It's just laying the foundation for why the things I'm about to talk about are such a big issue in my mind, and surely in the minds of many others too. So let's start out at the top. Veiled crystals. You need these for a lot of important things. They come from salvaging rare items, yellows, and they also come from when you defeat elite enemies, they just sort of drop on the ground sometimes. What you use them for is imprinting legendaries onto your gear, which eats up a lot of these. You use them for upgrading gear of all kinds, be it weapons, armor, or jewelry. While these each have their own category of general materials used to upgrade them, every single one of them does require a load of veiled crystals to actually upgrade to higher levels. And now comes the big kicker. Enchanting items is a really common thing that we do in the game to get better rolls on items that are otherwise good but not great. Before the recent patch, enchanting an item would cost 1 forgotten soul, some veiled crystals, and a chunk of gold. Legendary items also required 1 fiend's rose. Now, however, it seems players are thinking that enchanting costs of items are scaling upwards a little bit harder than they used to, with more veiled crystals required to do if you use multiple rerolls. Rerolls costing the amount of gold that they do was already more than enough cost. It doesn't need to cost anything else. Maybe the forgotten souls, I mean, that's fair, but the gold cost is already exponentially increasing every time you do a reroll, as generally you would get items into the millions of gold per roll to really make them perfect, and farming gold is not necessarily the quickest thing if you want to do it with multiple pieces of equipment. But now with the addition of the veiled crystals cost increasing, it puts a massive bottleneck on an important resource in the game. In the base game, I literally never was hurting for veiled crystals. I never had to go out of my way to farm them. I was disciplined, and I salvaged every single item that I wasn't using that dropped until nearly level 60, not selling a single one. The result was I had a great big pile of veiled crystals, and just the sort of passive income of them coming from killing elites in dungeons from that point on fueled my entire preseason of build making. And trust me, doing what I do on this channel, I make a lot more builds than the average player, and I didn't have issues with veiled crystals at any point before the season. In season 1, however, I followed the same method, not doing anything but salvaging the items I was getting until level 60, and I ran out of veiled crystals, making my first proper mid to late game build. Now every time that I'm making a build since then, or even just changing out a single piece of equipment, I have to have a veiled crystal farming session, and that just feels like crap. Not only is this from the enchanting requirement now being more of a thing, but a lot of players are noticing another thing that I have seen as well, one that is arguably much more of an issue and causing even more problems. Veiled crystal rates from salvaging items are simply significantly lower than they were before. Part of this is because now when you salvage high quality items, you get a chance at receiving a forgotten soul. And don't get me wrong, that's nice. Forgotten souls were sort of hard to get it was annoying to farm them, but the main reason that people ran out of Forgotten Souls before was enchanting items. And now when you get a Forgotten Soul from salvaging, it blocks you from also getting Veiled Crystals, which creates an entirely separate issue also with enchanting. So in essence, they made a nice change in theory by adding Forgotten Souls to salvage rolls, but also arguably made it harder overall by reducing Veiled Crystals coming into you as well. And that's not even it, because enchanting was made even worse than you might think from this point already. The community recently realized that there seems to be some sort of strange interaction going on here. Now, this is clearly a bug because it only happens with legendary items, not with everyone, but if you queue up a legendary item for enchantment and then check its cost, if you go into your season blessings and if you have smoldering asses in the vendor sales increasing blessing, take those out, then look at the enchanting cost again. The cost is much higher if you have points in the blessing made to make you more gold. In other words, if you, like me and just about any other player, looked at the season blessing and thought, oh sweet, they've added something that I can use to make gold less of an issue for me. It's not that simple. What this seems to do is just increase the inherent value of every item that you own, which of course does increase its value when selling to vendors, and that's what it's intended to do, but this also increases the cost of repairing items if you die, and it also increases the cost of enchanting these items. It is a multiplier based on the item's based value. The result of this is by taking the season blessing to make more gold, one of the main things you would normally spend gold on, which is enchantments, gets equally more expensive, and that is just a hilarious oversight. Combine that with Veiled Crystal drop rates and salvage rates going down, and also the fact that enchanting items now can cost even more Veiled Crystals than it used to do, and we have got a very explicable, notable issue on our hands. And the best part of all of this, none of these things were in the patch notes. None of these things have been talked about by the developers. They've just sort of been snuck into the game, and we've had to find them as a community ourselves as we play. First, just going off of the vague feeling that something is different, it's not quite right, not quite functioning the way that it did before, and then slowly realizing the different changes that have been put into place to make this the way that it is, to make this an actual problem. Making builds, not even changing builds, but making even one proper build is not only notably more expensive right now than it was before Season 1, but it also just requires a ton more farming of Veiled Crystals to even be able to do it in the first place, which is just such a strange result to happen, considering, again, a lot of player feedback before the season was, hey, why is it so hard to make builds? Why is it so hard to switch builds? I want to experience other playstyles, but you've made it really difficult, time-consuming, and expensive, so maybe can we fix that? Then they, without telling us, increase the difficulty, time requirement, and the cost of, again, not just switching to a second build, but even making one build in the first place. And then in the Campfire Chat streams that they've been doing the last couple of weeks, they've been toting the idea that they are reducing skill point reset and Paragon node refund cost by 40%. Well, big whoop. If these other changes weren't in place, that would at least be a small victory for us, a step in the right direction. But as it stands with the way things are working right now, it's barely even fixing the changes they made in the patch, and the fact that we weren't even told this was going to be a thing is just a big problem. Communication from the developers needs to be better. They need to tell us when changes this big are happening. I still believe that the enchanting cost going up in relation to the season blessing is a bug, so yeah, of course they wouldn't be able to tell us about that because they didn't know it was a thing, or else they would have fixed it, I hope. But the reduction in Veiled Crystal rewards from salvaging items is something they 100% knew would happen, but they didn't even tell us that Forgotten Souls would be added to the salvage pool in the first place, which is the main thing that is causing this drought of Veiled Crystals. But then, even outside of that, I genuinely feels like the rate of Veiled Crystal salvages has gone down as a whole, and again, I'm getting that sentiment from a lot of people, and when a lot of people feel like something is going on, chances are that thing is actually happening, and if I had to guess, I would say they probably shadow nerfed the drop rates in full knowledge of the season blessing coming in that raises the chances of getting rare materials from salvaging. It sucks, but it's something that I totally believe they would purposefully do. They nerfed all the classes before because they were scared of how strong Malignant hearts would be in the season, so why wouldn't they nerf our material gains because they were scared of how strong the season blessing would be that gives us more? Why wouldn't they nerf the cost of enchanting because they were scared of us all having that extra gold? Hell, they even reduced our XP gain in patch 1.1 just before we got access to the season blessing that gives us more XP from monster kills. It feels like they did a ton of making us weaker as a base in so many different areas just so we wouldn't spike too hard in power, gold, or resources as a result of the season mechanics, and the more that I come to realize all the things that they've done and connect all these dots, it upsets me, right? I do enjoy this game. I find the core gameplay really fun, but the more that stuff like this happens, and especially the parts of it that happen quietly without the developers even telling us about them, the more it makes me sort of resent this journey that they're taking us on. Just let the game be fun. Why would you make us spend more time farming materials to enjoy ourselves in the game? Why would you make builds harder to make? You yourself said that you wanted us to make these varied builds and enjoy them, but your actions as of right now are simply not lining up with the words that you've told us. Put simply, this all of this. It is a problem. I felt the need to talk about it with you all. Blizzard needs to do better with all of it. We need them to know what we aren't happy about. We need to be able to express what the problem is, and for that to happen, we all need to understand what exactly has been done to these systems, which is why I've broken it down here to the best that I can. I hope you've managed to get some enjoyment from this breakdown of these changes, or at the very least some vindication if you've been feeling the way that I did for days that something was definitely off, now that you can see that you are far from the only one who feels this way. Like if you liked the video, subscribe and hit the notification bell for more, and most importantly, ladies and gentlemen, until next time, stay sweet. Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.